All right, so a few more seconds, give me 2 more seconds. All right, so does anybody want to share out what you think literacy is before we further the discussion? Any thoughts on what you feel literacy is? Okay, okay, Sarah.
Reading and comprehend.
Okay, what to read and what to comprehend, or to read and comprehend. All right, good. Okay, anybody else want to add to that, or you want to further discuss what that entails? Reading and comprehension. Okay, Ms. McLean.
I think we now consider that speaking fluently and thoughtfully about what you've read is another component of literacy.
Okay, so it's just not just reading, and that's what we traditionally thought, that literacy is just the ability to read and write, but now we know it's other processes that includes thinking and listening, and all of this comes together in order to make a student or us as people literate. All right, so we're going to show you 3 different definitions of what literacy is, but before that we're going to share our objectives for today. All right, objective number 1 is we're going to evaluate gaps in student work using an SAT essay rubric and brainstorm an action plan to begin closing the gaps found in student work. And the reason why we chose SAT is because that is pretty universally what students use to, well, what we use to measure student college readiness. Even though Brendan and I and some of you teach AP classes, all kids don't elect to take AP classes, but SAT is what is generally used to measure that. And our second objective is we're going to, as teachers, try to understand and to incorporate in our teaching advanced literacy and daily instruction that includes critical reading, writing, and speaking skills.
And so the idea here is to get us to our 100% college readiness marker, to ensure that 70% or more of our kids persist through college and graduate within 6 years. They have to be literate. So we have to understand what that means. We have to understand how they're being tested for literacy. And then we have to think about, okay, well, what do we do? What do we, all of us, do to build literacy?
All right, so the first definition for literacy is the ability to make sense of and engage in advanced reading, writing, listening, and speaking. All right, and the word sense is what stands out to me because someone can read and write something, but if you're not reading and really understanding what you're reading and comprehending it, or if it doesn't connect to you what the purpose is, or if you're writing something and no one else could really understand what you're writing, or it's not clear in some way, that is not literacy. Okay, so now there's also such a thing as critical literacy. All right, so that is the ability to read, write, using skills of critical thinking, which includes evaluation, reflection, and sometimes with the goal of identifying or understanding social issues in a text of the further social change. All right, so this is what Brandon and I and all of us hopefully are doing in our classes, especially in AP when we want our kids to focus on what is the purpose, what does this mean outside the text? How can you think about this universally and connect this to our lives and to the way that people live in our world?
And so this is also part of this notion that what it means to be literate has changed historically. Prior to the American Revolution, literacy meant you could sign your name. Today we have a much different conception of what it means to be literate. And part of what we want in the 21st century is almost subversive. We want students to question and to challenge what they are reading. We don't want them to just comprehend. We want them to go further and apply it to the world around them, question it, challenge it, come up with new ideas and new solutions. And the third definition of literacy we have is called disciplinary literacy. So within those first 2 definitions, when we're thinking about the tools that we use, we're going to try to start using a disciplinary literacy approach, which means that students have the ability to use the unique tools that experts in a particular discipline use to engage in the work of that discipline. That means, Mr. Morales, shaking your head, that means that what it means to be literate in history is different than what it means to be literate in mathematics.
Right.
You want your students to read, write, speak, listen, think like mathematicians.
And be able to use technology.
You know,
And understand technology.
Exactly. I want my students to be able to read, think, speak like a political scientist or like a historian. And so I'm looking at the specific tools that a historian is going to use when reading a text, or when writing a text, or when speaking, right? And that's going to look a little different than what Ms. Johnson's going to use in AP Literature, and what you're going to use in calculus, what each of us is going to use. So the tools will look a little bit different across our different content areas. But ultimately, we're all shooting for similar goals when it comes to literacy. We want our kids to be college ready. We throw this word out a lot. But what does college ready mean? One of the ways we measure college ready is the SAT essay. And I really wanted to look at 2 actual student samples to understand what it is our kids are being asked to do and how they're doing. So first, you have the scoring guide in front of you. This is how the SAT essay is scored. It's scored on a 6-point rubric, and it is graded twice. Everything you need? So 2 people will grade this essay on the 6-point rubric, and then when our kids get their scores back, they'll get a number out of 12, because they'll combine the 2 scores. So if you got, say, a 4 and a 3, your score on the test will be a 7. So I very quickly want to look at what it takes to get a perfect score on this essay. Stacy, can you read out in the top left-hand corner of the box here, the first bullet point?
Score 6.
Yes.
Effectively and insightfully develops a point of view on the issue and demonstrates outstanding critical thinking using clearly appropriate examples, reasons, and other evidence to support its position.
Ms. Robinson?
Is well organized and clearly focused, demonstrating clear coherence and smooth progression of ideas.
Ms. Fliss?
Exhibits skillful use of language using a varied, accurate, and apt vocabulary.
Ms. Altman?
Demonstrates meaningful variety in sentence structure.
And Mr. Candiotto?
Free of errors in grammar, usage, and mechanics.
Okay. That's a perfect essay. Now, the generally accepted college-ready level is here, a 4. So while, yes, a 6 essay for all of our kids would be fantastic, we want at least a score of a 4 for our students. I will tell you that on the most recent SAT, no student earned a 6 from any grader. So,
None of our students.
none of our students, exactly. What I want us to do is, using this rubric, I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, I want to grade these 2 essays. They're fairly short. Now, I made a mistake. There's no way to distinguish these from each other. So if you would flip them open, please. All right, in my case, 2, cross out their names, they now look identical. The shorter essay, the one that ends about 4 lines into the second page, that's your student 1. So if everybody could write student 1 at the top of that. The longer essay, the student who used both pages, that is your student 2. If you could write student 2 at the top of that. Now I'd like you to take 10 minutes individually to read both essays. Sorry. Yes, oh sorry, let me reframe. These are our students. These are the actual essays that they wrote on their most recent SAT. So these have been scored by College Board, and I'll tell you the official scores when you're done. So if you flip the first page, you'll find the actual prompts. If you could all take 10 minutes, read the prompts, read both essays, and doing the best you can, using the rubric in front of you, give it a score out of 6. 5 minutes left. If you have not already started, you should have moved on to the second essay. What did you give each essay and why?
Student one, student two, 4. And it was, like, my largest issue that it seems like they take their topics in it, so what their argument is, but they kind of jump around a little bit. So it's why it didn't go higher. I saw more errors, grammatical errors in this one than I did with essay. Yeah. What did you see?
Same.
Oh, you did 3 and 4 too?
Yeah.
Hey!
Yeah, because
That's great.
I wasn't, it was definitely, it was not, definitely not fixed.
Right.
Because, yeah, I mean, these are good examples, both of these. So that's how I eliminated that right away. And then there was a question about whether there's going to be 3 or 4. And I felt the same way. Being able to carry out a little bit more examples for this one. This one had plenty of examples.
Yeah, and I felt like it was a little bit more focused on what they were trying to argue for.
Right.
So I know I agree with you 100%. That's the exact same thing that I did to determine between the 3 and the 4. This one, has some errors in grammar, and then this one did. Versus an accumulation, like multiple errors in grammar and usage.
All right, let's come back together.
Yeah, I was wondering if this was actually the normalizing that they did also for
Can I have everybody back up here,
CFA.
please?
Because we did that for the.
All right. So let's look at student 1. Can I have 3 volunteers to share out what they gave student 1? Megan Fliss.
The double score, so like,
So just your individual score on the 6-point rubric.
oh, a 3.
So you gave it a 3.
Yes.
Tell me why you gave it a 3.
It was only 3 paragraphs long, so it wasn't a completely developed essay. There was insufficient detail and support. I think by the 2nd page, they were running out of time and knew that they needed to use some type of support, so pulled in 1984, but it wasn't fitting to the argument.
Did someone not give it a 3? Yeah, Ms. Rodriguez.
Actually,
You gave it a 2. Tell us why you gave it a 2.
the beginning was fairly good, but towards the middle, there was not very good organization. I think that the development of the second topic should have been more emphasized there, and it was just lost at the end. So I do not think that it actually had an ending there.
So 3 out of 2. Ms. Allman.
I was heading more in the direction of the 2 for a variety of reasons. What Ms. Fliss said that the 1984 just didn't fit. The choice of that example was bad. That the progression of ideas didn't work. Incorrect word choice. The score of 2 in that rubric, it seemed to fit.
Yeah, he was stretching, right? He
Yeah,
knew
yeah,
he
was
needed a specific
definitely
example, and he was like, maybe this works, and then he ran out of time.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like, I gave this person, I was like a 2/3. I think it would have been more of a 3 if they had time to finish. Because when they were talking about 1984, I'm like, what about it? I'm like, if, the reader hasn't read, if I'm reading your paper and I haven't read 1984, I have no clue what you're talking about. Whereas the other person, they went into detail when they gave their book. So I was like a 2.5. I know they can't be. So I was in between a 2, 3. Like, I think it's a 2, but if they had finished it, it could have been a 3.
Right. No, that's exactly what the reader said. So both readers gave this person a 3. So overall, out of 12, this person got a 6. What? What would he give the second essay, student 2?
I said a 4.
So Stacy, you gave it a 4. Why'd you give it a 4 or 5?
I don't know, maybe because I read the first one first, but like if this person had much more detail. I like how they had their point of view, but then they kind of would kind of debate their point of view in a way, and they had more detail. I definitely felt like it was more college ready level.
Okay, so much closer to the college grade level, you get a 4 or 5. Is someone else, Ms. McLean, you're nodding.
Well, I gave her, in person, 4.5 to a 5 as well. I felt as though the structure was good. They actually understood the format of an essay and stuck very carefully to making a beginning, middle, and end. You know, there was a conclusion, lots and lots of resource material cited. I thought that was very well done. It seemed very good.
Yeah, so the actual score this person got was 2 5s. So both scorers gave that person a 5. Now,
I didn't get it right, but that's good.
and both, and I have various attention back up here. Both Ms. McLean and Ms. Jones picked out sort of the reason why, which was the examples they used were much more specific. They were much clearer and well organized. And so this student was among, I think, 3 or 4 seniors to get a 10. So, I want you to take about 2 minutes now and think about what you've read in both papers. And with your partner, I want you to make a list. What are some of the problems we are seeing that we need to address as a school? Go. Good things, positives, and negatives.
I don't know, one of the things that pops out to me is organizing your examples to fit your point or your argument before you start writing out your essay. So
Well,
that way
I
it
think
forms.
do an outline, just start to do an outline, go topic statement, and marking down the points that you're gonna cover.
You should. I'm not sure if they all do.
Because I'm not sure if that's what they're doing here.
Yeah.
Because I had to do this for normalizing the AP exam,
Right.
just 2 weeks ago. Okay.
No, I agree with you. I think if that is happening, these essays get better. Because it feels like you come up with your opinion in paragraph 1, or what you think, right? So they're saying, okay, schools should teach values. But then it just jumps into immediate examples, you know, rather connect.
Time this topic statement together with the example,
Right.
and then summarizing those at the end.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of the first thing that should happen, should be some sort of
Exactly, so, and so, you know, they're writing the
topics in it.
but they're not
Following paragraph.
and there's discovery of their way to say that.
And then developing the topic sentence with examples.
All right, I'm going to pull us back together. And for the sake of time, I'm going to ask that we come together quickly. And also that we focus mostly on the gaps here that we're seeing, things that we need to address moving forward. So if I could have, we'll sort of share out, what are the big things we need to address? Ms. Fliss?
Even when we have seniors, just a lack of planning before they begin to write.
Yes.
And so then there's kind of this lack of organization that we saw in the first student example.
Yes, definitely a lack of planning. So, and this is also a lack of practice in planning. You just need to practice like doing it over and over again. What else? What's more?
A very like superficial understanding of the meaning of words, like some of the words they use, but not quite the right way.
Yeah, it's like I told Bethesda, they need to learn the power of the thesaurus. Like, you know, they were always.
They use it too
No,
much.
they do.
Well,
They
they-
use it too much and then they
I
use the
mean,
wrong words the wrong way.
Yes.
Yes.
That is
They're
absolutely
not
true.
using their parts of speech in the correct context.
So we have a vocabulary issue.
Yes, there's vocabulary
And-
issue and like subject verb agreements.
Yes.
Or like singular plural things and antecedents, we're just like, yeah.
So we have some grammatical issues, we have some vocabulary issues, we have a lack of planning. What about the structure or the arguments themselves?
Towards the end, it was lacking in both, big time. The closure, going back to the first statement and defining exactly why is it that you can support that and the flow.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing lack of closure, I'm also hearing a lack of commentary.
Yes.
How does what you are saying support your thesis?
Right.
Right?
Right.
What does George Orwell have to do
Exactly.
with your argument?
Yes.
Ms. McLean?
Well, I had said analysis and evaluation was lacking in this, they weren't really analyzing, evaluating, and then Andy said, well, even if they were, they weren't expressing it. So it's, sort of the expression of the ideas that you've come up with is the,
Good. Any other last thoughts?
I would hate to
Miss-
differ.
So let's do, I'll do Crouch, Robinson, and Fraser.
Is argumentation up there?
What about argumentation?
Their choice of arguments aren't always the strongest arguments for that particular, so I guess evaluation of an argument and whether or not to use it.
Okay, so evaluating the argument, no
Right.
idea of a strong one. Davida?
As far as the structure, Brandon, I'm clearly seeing with these two essays that they have an idea of what they need to write. Because in both of these essays, I found, comparing the two, I can clearly see the hook. I can see the background information that supports the hook and their thesis. So I think we're doing something right here as far as that.
Oh, yeah.
And then the subtopics that go into the topic sentences. So
Good,
they know what to do, it's just kind of how to pull it out of.
good.
I think you see this strongly with student one. A lot of the essays that I read mirrored this one, but we need to work on transitions going out of a paragraph and dropping me into the next paragraph
Yes,
and making sure that it
segues.
weaves or segues, yeah,
A
right,
graceful
smoothly.
segue
Yes.
is worth a million.
And I see a lot of the same work, same thing in the work that I read all the time. It's just a lack of transitions. Ms. Stratton, do you have one more thing?
I was gonna offer a solution.
Go.
Am I jumping ahead?
No, but give us a solution.
I think this is a big thing that we see is kind of lack of planning, and I think transitions is linked to that. Just like a lot of times lack of an outline before students sit down to write an essay, they just start going and they haven't actually planned out what they're gonna say in what order.
Yeah.
So something we were talking about as a solution for our team is moving forward when we receive essays from students for colleges or scholarships, we need to see evidence of an outline before we'll even look at that first draft. So that's part of the assignment. We will implement that. Part of the assignment is to see the outline. We need to see your planning process before we'll edit the essay.
It's particularly the case with Larissa Molinar.
Did you get that? Close up?
So I like that solution. I like that solution, and I think that actually should be true across all of our classes. For everything we have kids write, they should always be planning. That's a good thing to reinforce. Yes.
I mean, getting into calculus might do the same thing, but in calculus I call it the radar, and actually split it up into a quadrant. It's like the reading part of it, the asking the question, what do you have, why, the decoding part of it, and then the reasonability, the reasonableness of it, and then just summarizing it. Can you make it fit into your kind of outline? And it's called radar in calculus.
Yeah, and so there's, again, it's disciplinary literacy. There's ways to outline in every single content area. We just need to make sure we're reinforcing that and giving them structures in every content.
Yeah, and they see that in calculus.
So what I want to very quickly go over what we actually see. So I purposely gave you two of the top essays. So these are two of our top students, including the person who got a 6. In fact, the person who got a 6 is, I would say, a stronger writer than the person who got a 10. And in class work. If we look at the actual scores down here, only 43% of our students scored a college-ready score of a 4 or higher on the essay. That means 56% of our students scored a 3 or lower on that rubric. And all those problems were intensified. These are the bland versions of those problems, the light versions of those problems. In terms of the other, that was a 20% increase from May, by the way. In terms of the other two literacy-based sections, on critical reading, we had 23% college ready. 5% increase from May. 54% increased their college, or their critical reading score. On writing, 34% were college ready. That was a 10% increase from May, and 66% increased their writing score overall. So we definitely have work to do. I like that Ms. Rutland talked to us about solutions. I wanted to come up with one very basic solution that we can all emphasize in the next semester in our classes. It's an article that I actually read with all the seniors before they took the SAT. It's called Be Specific. I think we use this phrase a lot in our classrooms, but I want to read this article very quickly and talk about what it means for our practice. So take 4 minutes, read the article, think about how do we apply this, and then we'll come back together.
Finished reading the article. Okay, what I like about this most is it kind of went back to what Brandon said a little bit earlier about how we need to make sure that we focus on getting our kids to be an expert in whatever we're teaching. All right, and I like the quote in the back. It basically says on page 92 at the top, it says a writer is all at once everything, an architect, French cook, farmer, and at the same time a writer is none of these things. All right, so if you want to be an effective writer, you have to be very, very specific. And I even have a quote in my room that always talks about, just being very precise. And it's going back to some of the comments that you guys said about the essays. They were lacking commentary. Like, a kid wanted to say this, but they didn't say it. It's like that they were thinking it, but they didn't actually verbalize that. So then it leaves, like all this ambiguity. So how can you affect somebody if you don't precisely affect them? All right, so in this, they had an exercise as well at the bottom, and this is something that you can maybe do with your students in your class. On the bottom of page 192, 193, is to go from general to more specific. And what I do with my students is I tell them there's a difference between actually going to a movie, purchasing a ticket, and going in to see a preview. If I pay for it, I want to see the movie. All right, so don't just give me the bare minimal details and then I leave out confused at what happened, I don't get it, I didn't get the whole gist of it, and sometimes when they're writing, they don't do that. So you saw the data, and even though we're making some headway, and that's great that we're making some headway, but still we have a lot of work to do because none of our students in those areas that talks about how literate they are had 50%. They didn't even reach the 50% percentile for critical reading, writing, and and that shows us that we have some work to do. All right, so what do you guys think about this article? And then I want you, after you tell me what you think about it, I want you to also tell me what are some things that you're going to focus on doing maybe in your discipline. And this is just a start to what we could do to focus on getting our kids to be literate. All right, so think about that for maybe, write that out, think about it for a while and take about 2 minutes to write it out and then we'll discuss.
We're actually almost out of time, so
I'm
let's
sorry.
just discuss.
Let's discuss.
What can we do in our classrooms to hold kids accountable to being specific? How do we do that?
That stretching method. I mean, don't just stop there. Don't just stop at pen or sandwich. Don't just stop there. Like, keep pushing them until they get into the more specific.
Good. Always using stretch it. Anytime you're ever asking a question in class, even if it's not quite related to the objective or whatever it is you're talking about, whatever they're saying, always using stretch it. What
I
else?
think sometimes, Brandon, as instructors, we forget the really guided practice portion of things that we can, I think sometimes we're so quick to get to the lesson that we forget to actually teach them and really show them examples. So I know some of my students say examples. So let's have something blank, let's write it out together to see what works well, what looks good, how it's supposed to be structured, and then you do it. But just don't give me one example, give them multiple examples.
Good. Ms. Morales?
In math, what I have the students also do is not seek confirmation from me. I hold confirmation completely out. have the students confirm to the student or the presenter, if they understood it, could they talk more about it, confirmation within their peers.
Good, so peer accountability is important too. We are out of time. What I do in my classroom, this is the 3-point rubric I sent out to 11th and 12th grade teams for writing, or is there any writing assignment. This part down here, the use of evidence piece, it's a point. You either get a point or you don't. If you're not specific, you just don't get the point. So this is a way to force kids to be specific in their writing and to score them on it so they know, okay, if I'm not specific, I'm not going to get a good grade on this. Because the more we as a group hold them accountable to being specific, the more they will remember, the more they'll know. So they get to these exams, they'll know things, they can write about them with specificity. That's all we have. Thank you very much, Ms. Narani.
Thank you guys, again to Brandon and Dion for taking a super time where our students are really in the state of writing, and writing is an extension of their ability to be literate individuals. I'm passing around a survey. I'm going to explain it really quickly. The purpose for the survey is for us to get some feedback about effective professional development. This is something new we're trying. Let's see if it worked for you. If it didn't, we can go back to the drawing board. The first session and the second session are the ones that we did in the library, which is accountability and culture. The third and fourth, you're going to write in what you actually went to, because people went to different things. And then the two for behind you. And then please give as much open-ended feedback as possible. Because that will help us figure out what specifically worked today and what specifically did not work or felt like a waste of time. Yeah. So I put on here, put your name, but of course I can't force you to. So it's up to you.
Thank you.